Yeah.
Good. This line can help withdraw you from an encounter.
Darren, this is a citation.
Circulate my paper. You lose your ear for what is happening around you. You lose your sense of proportion. So you set yourself up to the kind of knowledge in which your life depends. You cannot hear what is happening around you. Something plots against you.
It becomes harder to break out of your isolation.
And Louis XIV, after
outlawing the writings and teachings of the great philosopher Confucius. And he slowly lost control of the realm.
That's the one that's, what's it called? That's the one I still learn drugs.
Some 50 years of relative peace. Do not lose maneuverability. Then choose isolation only as the last resort.
your symptoms, it's not too soon to talk about
Instead of dying without even trusting yourself to do it, you can simply choose to release the need to control. Instead of resisting your flaws and accept yourself now, choose to love yourself the way you are.
Although unlikely, PML, or rare brain infection.
Bigger set of wheels and tires means you have more traction, and traction can win you races. We're going to be running a 315 square around this car, but you can possibly run up to a 335. Now, with this kit, they also send you some flat pieces of steel. Now, they send them to you flat for a couple of reasons. One, they're just a little easier to ship. And two, the variations in your cut line between person to person can be different and change. So you have to bend these into shape to match the contour of your cut line. The reason why you're doing that is when you go to install your wheel tub, you're going to have some kind of a lip to weld this wheel tub to. So the idea here is to take these pieces of steel, you're going to have to set them kind of into place, and you have to make a couple marks with a Sharpie, and you're going to have to bend them to kind of match the contour to build this lip. Now, you can do that a couple different ways. You can take this over to a bench or your vise, and you can kind of start bending them into shape. You can just use solid muscle with your hands. They're not that heavy, they're not that hard to push, but it could be a little bit of work. Or if you have a hammer and a block of wood, you can do that too. So what we're going to end up doing here, setting them up here in place, we're going to grab a Sharpie, make a couple lines, we'll go over to the bench vise, that's the easiest one. We're just going to bend these things into shape. Somewhere in this general area. On some of these bends, you need to sneak up on the radius. So little bends spaced apart evenly will give you a nice sweeping curve. Alright, set this in here. It's close-ish. We've got one bend done, but we got to do a couple more bends to get it fit right. So, right in here a little bit. We'll bend it again. Other bends call for a little more persuasion. Okay, well that fits pretty good. Now one thing to note is you're going to want to leave this little flange up a little bit from the floor of the car. The idea here is to mark a line on this big flange, take it off, cut it so it matches the floor contour, and then from there you can weld it in. It'll give you a nice corner joint to weld and give you a good finished look. Now we're not going to be installing these. We're actually not even going to install the inner wheel tubs, and we're going to do that for a couple of reasons. One, we do have a roll cage that needs to get in here, and this is a good access point. Plus, we've got a fuel system to tackle. And the third thing is we're going to be doing some suspension work down here, and it's just beneficial to us to keep this all open so we can tackle that a little bit later. So what I'm going to do is just kind of finish the back. I'll create this flange, put a couple bends in it. We'll go ahead and tackle that fuel cell.
Before we start building out the roll cage, we need to make sure we have room for our fuel cell. We pocket will cut out the best place to accommodate the new tank.
Eating disorders, and even suicide. Do you have
We just want to get as many components back there as we can right now. That way when we go to build a cage, we kind of know what we have to work around, and that way we don't have to go back later and change some stuff. So we've got this awesome setup from Radiant Engineering. They sent us a fuel cell with all the good bits on the inside. They also sent us this cage to actually install it in there, and this saved us quite a bit of fabrication work. We'll talk about this later when we actually go to plumb the car, but for right now, we're just going to try to get this in the back living room.
You can die from someone else.
Now, there are a few things to consider when you're deciding where you want to put your fuel cell. In most cases, you'll probably end up somewhere in the back of the car, just like in our Camaro. In our case, we're going to cut out a big rectangular hole and sink this thing down as far as it will go. But you still have to be mindful of how big the fuel cell actually is. If ours was a little too wide, it could potentially interfere with the rear axle or other suspension components as they go through their motion. Something that's really cool in high-level race cars that you could also do is put the fuel cell in the passenger compartment. And what this will do is concentrate more weight near the center of the car, making it more responsive to the driver's inputs. A good example of this is something like a figure skater. When they have their arms in, they tend to spin really fast, and when their arms are extended, they spin much slower. So in our case, we feel like going in the back of the car is going to be just fine. So what I'm going to do here is actually just flip this thing over, mark out the rectangle, and we'll cut it out. Too precise with the cut here because the fuel cell cage has a nice big flange on it. The reason why we are sinking the cage down into the floor is because it will help keep the center of gravity lower overall. I'll clean up the edges with a grinder before grinding the paint off for future welding. Okay, so holes cut out. This thing should fit no problem. And it does, however, right now it's not sitting flush with the floor. That's because on the bottom here there's these tabs, 2 on each side. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this back in, mark out where these little slots need to be cut them out, and then this thing will sit nice and flat on the floor. Cage in here now, and it sits nice and flush with the floor. I don't need to put the fuel cell in, but these look really cool, so I just wanted to take a peek at it. But this will give us a pretty good idea of any obstructions you might have when you're fabricating the roll cage and the rear firewall. So we're not going to tack anything in right now, just because we'll probably be taking these out and putting them back in several times. But when we go to put it in the final time, I'll just do a stitch weld around the outside, and that'll be a good installation. Well, that looks really good. How did it go? All good. This will be a nice location for the fuel cell. We're starting off in a good direction with some high quality parts.
Right, I've got the passenger side pretty much buttoned up for the wheel tub area. I just have to abandon and add these two pieces to the driver's side. And we're ready for the roll cage.
Yep. And with everything, we'll have a really good idea of where the rear of the cage is going to land. And we've done a lot of cages before, but this one's going to be a little different because there's a few unconventional fabrication techniques we're going to use to build it. So,
Yeah, some cut lines that are gonna be a little crazy, so.
Yeah.
I'll get these in, we'll keep moving on.
What we concealed and on what we
You're watching Power Nation.
and to make sure
Today on the Detroit Muscle, we have all the flavors, no matter what you're craving. LS6, Hemi, Boss 429, all coming up right now. There's a unique
it deepens and
the feel of the driver's seat, the rumble of the engine. It's quite amazing how it can make you feel like you're on top of the world. Muscle cars elevate one's emotion, no matter the make or model. Sitting behind the wheel of a piece of Detroit muscle, out on the open road, is the stuff dreams are made of. This sense leaves you craving for more. And as a result, oftentimes, owning just one isn't good enough. So to satisfy that need, like the sack, become a collector. After a quick stroll to Alexander City, Alabama, we're here at the Welber Muscle Car Museum. We're going to take a look at some impressive examples of automotive history.
for a better
Tim Welber has been collecting cars for quite some time, and saying this collection is impressive is an understatement.
We're here in Alexander City, Alabama, at the Wilbur Muscle Car Museum. Give you a little history about the museum. I didn't intend to have a museum when it all started. Pam and I live about 2 blocks down the road. We were going to actually build a building to put our cars in. And this old car dealership came up for sale. And I'm like, whoa, this is a real place to put cars. And so we bought it, remodeled it, came here. And that's why you have the atmosphere. And it feels like you're going back in time when you walk into this old dealership. You'll swear you're in 1970 when you come in here. And I see a lot of people get a lot of smiles thinking, oh, I went back to the dealership just like this and bought my car back in the day. This is our 10th year at the dealership, and it probably took the first 3 years to get it to looking like you see it here. It started off, we got cars in here, then you started getting a few more neons, and then a few more true memorabilia pieces from that era. And over the last 7 or 8 years, we've really come a long way in converting it to a true 1970 dealership. The things you see are truly from 68, 69, 70, like the flags on the cars, the danglers in the ceilings, the neon, all of this would be exactly what you would have seen back when you went searching for that muscle car.
The big three make thousands upon thousands of muscle cars. If you're looking to start a collection, you need to make sure that you pick the right one for you.
Well, I'll put it this way, all cars in here have a story. Whenever I bought the car, I always wanted to know the story behind the car, but there are a few special ones I can think of probably that comes to light right away. Pam's pink 446 pack RT over here, which I only made 2 of, and she lays total flame dead. That's one that'll never leave. It almost left a few years ago, and I got some pretty sharp words about that. It'll never go back there. I have to say the K&K Dodge that raced in NASCAR, the Grand National Champion in 1970, and then the 28 land speed records. I went with my dad to the Talladega 500 race, and the very first one, and that car was racing, and gosh, I said, that's a race car. It just really imprinted me into the Mopar world when I saw that. And who would have ever thought that I'd had the opportunity to buy it? Probably the most emotional car I would have here would be my dad's 71 Indy Charger. And I grew up with it. I can't believe it's still here, and I have to say, my dad made sure as I got 16 years old, those keys were not to be found, and that's why I'm talking to you today, because I'm here in the cars here. For the 16-year-old, the 426 Indy, that would have been the end. Probably my dad knew it.
Now, no, this is the one that is dearest to your heart, right?
Yeah, there's always something that starts you thinking about what you want to be in life and what you want to have in life, and I can tell you, this started all with the collecting world for me. This is my dad's 426 Indy Charger. I could almost get a little teary-eyed thinking about all the fun we had in this car. As a kid, I sat in it, dreaming about someday getting the keys to it. That never happened. But I could clean it and wash it and do all that fun stuff and baby it. But the reason I'm talking to you today is because he didn't give me the keys at 16 years old. That's why the car is here. Because a 16-year-old, something like this, my dad knew would not be a good scenario. But yes, there's always something that sparks you to want to collect. This is what it did it for me right here. And my dad loved this Mopar, and I do too. So does my brother. So this car will never leave the family. It'll never be sold in my lifetime. There's no value you can put on something like this.
I mean, it's an impressive car, you know, hands down.
They only made 63 of them. That's what's kind of fun too. And I tell you what, I think my dad would smile pretty big right now if we took this car out for a drive.
I tell you, I bet you I'm going to smile bigger than he. Coming up, Dad tosses us the keys and a drop of the hammer.
Did you back up your short break? Without you in that.
You don't have to.
Even if the police have probable cause, the Fourth of
How this is gonna play out.
Do the work. End up successful. You're disrespectful every single conversation. Have you guys considered calling it?
Love freaks me out, but I want to find my person for life.
Oftentimes, as a collector, there are pieces that you have an emotional attachment with, which makes them priceless. Multiplying that with them being rare, it takes them to a whole other level. Muscle cars are meant to be enjoyed, with a combination of iconic styling plus heavy performance. This ride would put anyone on cloud nine.
dad's car and go down the highway. But yeah, there's nothing like a 426 Hemi Charger. What a 63 build. And obviously it's so special to me because this is what started it all. My dad, back in the day, buying the Hemi Charger. And that's what you ride in today.
So sitting in the driver's seat over there, do you get kind of the allure of why your dad bought this car?
Oh yeah, he talked about it a lot. The 71 through 4 Charger was his favorite car of all the racing history because the aerodynamics of this thing is so good. If you look at the grill on it, it's really only about 10 inches tall. If you lower that down into a race car shape, you've got something to slip through the wind. Really good in this coat body style.
I know, just sitting over here, it's unique how an old car, or at least for me, the connection that I have, even the smell.
Yeah, they got a unique smell.
You know, it's just like transports you into yesterday.
You back.
You know, and even then, with like my young son, I hope that he's picking up on the same stuff when he's riding beside me or in the back seat of one of these
He's
old.
getting what dad, just like I did with my dad. And hopefully that didn't happen for you, Sonny, because I tell you, people who are around cars and they get the connection to them, it's something that's good for you. It makes it. You see how I'm smiling right now driving my dad's Hemi Charger. And all the other cars put a smile on my face too, but this is the one that does most of it for me. Let's see if it'll accelerate here. How about that? That's good. Yeah, we went from 55 to about 90 real quick.
I like that I got loud.
Yeah. Well, we drank probably a couple of gallons of fuel just there. Good old race aviation mix we put in.
I'm not gonna lie, my cheeks are kind of hurt.
Anyway, we're pulling into a stop here, and you know what? I'm gonna let you drive it back.
My stomach just started to hurt just a little bit.
Alright.
I'm kind of giddy.
Alright, let's go. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I really am. I'm kind of nervous right now. It's just a car.
It's just a go ahead. No, it's not just a car.
Well, it is a car. They just happen to have a 426 in it.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna say a little prayer real quick.
I may need to do you. No, you get the feel of an unrestored 1971 Hemi. I guess I better shut my door back in. How's it feel over there?
It's not therapeutic like I was thinking.
You feel a little nervous? I'm like on cloud nine and I'm scared of all the cars. You know, something could happen to you. You're driving it right now.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm almost thinking about driving school, like 10 and 2. Eyes up.
We're going to do a little straightaway here. You'll have to kick into that Hemi a little bit.
You'll have to tell me when.
Alright. Don't blow it up. How do you feel?
I think I'm in the market for a Hemi.
That's right. I'm going to hear those big pistons and iron around. And that's just what makes me smile like I am doing right now. Which I'm smiling because they're almost back. And you haven't done anything wrong with the car yet.
I will say thank you that you don't understand the pure joy that is the other thing.
Well, you're one of the few people that ever got to drive this one.
Well, bucket list. Check.
Check this
We
one.
got one more.
Got one more.
Up next, one of those secrets keeping the car running for 50 years. We get the inside scoop from some expert.
Never care.
Okay, go back into the sugar. Should take a minute.
surrounded by muscle cars his whole life. Working at Mecum Auctions has given him the opportunity to see the best of the best. And seeing Tim's collection is way more than just another day at the office. Does it not? When you see that? And I was warned before I came here that this so-called collection of his is a museum that can be sensory overload, and that is an understatement. This is top shelf, world class, not only with the cars that are on display, but with all of the memorabilia, the way everything is arranged and organized and displayed. Ground zero, especially if you're an old car fan. Generally speaking, car collecting stems from having a passion about cars and specific cars. You could be a car collector with one important car. Certainly, we know lots of folks that have worked hard through their life and have found out and have identified a car or two that's important for them to have. And certainly that's what drives the auction business, is folks that really want to either recreate an experience they had with the car as a youngster, or maybe it's a car that they've recently discovered. Find that to be the case as well. So there really is no defining ingredient on what it takes to be a collector other than a love and a passion, and it becomes a priority in your life that over a period of time may not be the worst place to put a little bit of extra disposable income. Most people that have had cars or even a single car for a long period of time, when it comes time to sell, they're doing pretty good with it. To be the proud owner of vehicles like this, well, isn't all fairy tales and pixie dust. There is some issues that come along with them. Some of the things that are really important that might affect the ability to buy a car or two or more is where you're going to keep it at. You have room in your garage or your house, you have to run a facility, and so you need to have all that planned out as well. But what's really interesting about the collector car market is the cost of care and feeding on a well-presented car is surprisingly reasonable. These cars are fairly simple. Now, granted, after time, things can wear out, things can start leaking, but generally speaking, it's not going to be really crazy expensive. And maybe one of the big surprises in today's collector car world is how reasonable collector car insurance is. Way less than your daily driver. So if you've got multiple cars, you can insure them quite inexpensively, and most states even have multi-year antique vehicle license plates at a fraction of the cost of real license plates. So, pros and cons to everything, but I can tell you from experience that having the cars and having to write a check occasionally for some of these issues, it almost really becomes secondary. When you get one of these cars, the worst thing that you can do is not drive. So we drive every car in the museum, not one of them will fire right up and go out the door. There's one little trick to it. They're carbureted cars. If you can put a race fuel, 50% with aviation fuel, and your local airport will sell it to you. We mix it half and half, and we never have carburetor issues. Why? Because the race fuel, it goes out clean, it sits a while. The aviation fuel has preservative in it. And the two combined give you what you need to, keep the carburetor going. Sometimes with vehicles with this type of prestige requires skill in hand. We do carburetor service every so many years, whether they need them or not. We at least check them out. We want to know that we are ahead of the curve servicing those parts before they age themselves into a problem. Whether it be spark plugs, plug wires, fuel systems, fuel pumps. The smaller the amount of fuel in something, the quicker that it can turn bad or evaporate to a point that it dries out the materials in the carburetor or in the fuel pump, whether it be the diaphragm or the accelerator pump. Those things take a toll. Sometimes rubber, petroleum products can turn rubber into hard as a cathode chip, and it cracks and it leaks and it causes problems. So the last thing you want is to have a very nice low mileage car with fuel leak that can potentially cause a fire or dissolve paint, make paint change colors. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen from that. That's a big part of the job. As you get past 4 or 5 cars and you get on up around 60, 70, sort of like where we're at here, it's the time that it takes to keep them all running. And I absolutely pride ourselves in the fact we have no cars that will not just drop a battery and go. So that because the time factor as time goes on, the more you get it, you'll find, oh gosh, I got 10 cars and I might have time to drive 5 of them. You might keep that in mind as you grow your collection. You maybe need some help like I have here because it's important to keep these cars running. You can't be nervous to work on a car like this. If you're nervous, you're more focused on your nervousness
to be cautious. You have to be aware of what you're working on. But you can't be scared to fix the car. We just fix it, we move on. That makes it also comforting to be able to work here. It's always a challenge, and I think the challenge is what helps keep it fresh. Coming up, if you think car collecting is all about who has the most pink slips, you're in for a surprise.
Found you a match. I want to work for something that's bigger than just me.
How this is gonna play out.
Do the work. And that's successful. Disrespectful. Every single conversation. Have you guys considered calling it?
Love freaks me out, but I want to find my person for life. This could be the start of something amazing. Or maybe not.
I've always been looking for my person.
Keep showing me things for good right now.
I don't know how this works long term.
I'm like 1 second away from driving it. But wait. Everything's perfect. Ready for me?
Before you just jump into collecting, it's always wise to do a bit of research because not all these vehicles are created equal. So the first thing that I always recommend folks that ask me, where do I start, is really identify, number one, more than anything else, a budget price range. Because there's no sense in getting all excited about a great example of whatever particular you like, but when it's priced out of the range that might be possible. Pick out some cars that you want to buy, do some price comparables so that you know that you're going to be roughly in the same ballpark, and then of course you want to seek out the best example of that, whether in an auction or anything else. The market right now is very strong, it's very hot, but there's no reason to think that the market's going to be easing off, even anytime soon. So I also recommend that people jump in now. Owning these cars puts us all in our happy place, and I don't think you can put a price tag on that. To accumulate a collection this extensive doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of hard work and dedication. When did I start collecting cards? And that would have went way back to my dad's day when he said he wasn't any charger. That's where the roots start. Collection like you see here in today's world, because I've had all the years to find just the right cars at prices that were a lot more reasonable in the early days than they are now. Maintaining a car collection like this, you have to think about things getting dried out. You also have to think about moisture being collected in certain fluids.
You're helping the drowning man, but you're only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. The infector possesses an inward instability that radiates outward, drawing disaster to all that they touch.
The suspension system that has a much better ride and a little bit of ride height adjustability. That's a good idea. Just off an axle, or this side of the go somehow headed for the track record. So we have what that is. So we put in the call the certified auto mechanic down in Alabama. They came through with this 8.8-inch rear axle. Now this one came out of Ford Explorer. And this axle, in conjunction with these tires and wheels, puts our track width at only a half-inch wider than the stock setup. So we're in great shape there. Now this one's got 373 gears, it's just like our Jeep Cherokee. It's got a limited slip differential, 31 spline axles, disc brakes, and a 5 or 4.5-inch bolt pattern. This one seems to be a low mileage unit, pretty good shape. The Ford 8.8 can be found under Explorers, Crown Vics, Mustangs, Rangers, and full-size pickups. So needless to say, they're easy to find and parts are cheap. Now each model has a different track width, so like Ryan said, the Explorer axle fits our application perfectly. Now we're not hacking stuff up, we're unbolting things and taking it apart because after all, these are antiques. Okay, through the magic of television, we already have the front sheet metal and the engine sitting on the front suspension. That way, we get an accurate representation of what the front ride height actually is. And knowing where that's going to sit, well, we can set our rear ride height exactly where we want it. And on this old truck, well, we're after either a level stance, or even one with a slight rake to it. Good. One more. Right there. Perfect. So with the help of our bubble gauge and a couple of jack stands, we can set the attitude and altitude of our truck. Because after all, it's all about how this thing looks coming down the road. Alright, with the rear half of our frame stripped down and the ride height set about where we want it, we're almost ready to start throwing some parts at that thing. But before we do that, we've got a few brackets to fold up in weld first. Now the kit we're using is a Welder Series triangulated 4-link. Now all 4 links have some adjustability built into them, so you can dial in your pinion angle. Now the kit comes with the tube sleeves and urethane bushings to attach to the link ends, as well as all the hardware you need. It's got coilover mounts, upper and lower link mounts, as well as the shock tabs to attach both the axle and the frame end. Now before we do that, we're going to bend up and weld these lower link mounts and we're ready to go. Now once you have the solid block that acts as your coilover attachment point welded in, you can go ahead and fold up both sides to approximately 90 degrees. Now here's a pretty handy tip. Using a thin piece of cardboard stock as a shim and the link mount bushing center as a spacer, you can weld together the lower link mount and not risk it being too tight together, having to pry it apart to install the link. And with the bracket tacked together, go ahead and install the lower link mount bolt. And that'll prevent the sides of the mount from straying apart during the final welding process. Amounts of axle brackets from the Explorer axle, and I'm grinding everything down to smooth it out with a flat wheel. But since we don't know exactly where our new 4-link brackets are going to go, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the rest of the paint on the axle tubes. So with the tubes cleaned up, we're using the original axle location to use as a reference to position our new axle. Now's the time to check and recheck to make sure the axle is located perfectly. And we'll make sure it's dead on square before we set our pinion out. There's 4 inches between the wheels and the frame. Yes, there's 4 inches in between this wheel and the frame. It's still centered. Yeah. Yeah, right about there. You dial the rest in with the 4 inch. Cool.
Up next, we'll get our rear axle locked in place. And later, it's how you can turn a single solid color into a custom candy effect. Stay tuned.
This could be the start of something amazing. Or maybe not. I want to get to the juicy stuff.
This is a truth session.
Besides conveniently shifting blame, a scapegoat can serve as a warning to others.
One second away from driving it. But when everything's perfect.
Large parts of it.
welcome back to the shop. We're in the middle of swapping axles and suspensions on our 49 Chevy pickup, Project Class 6. Then we've got our Ford 8.8-inch rear axle centered in the frame and square. We've got our pinion angle set about where it needs to be, and the frame is sitting at ride height. Ready to start adding some brackets to this thing. Starting with a measurement of 2 inches inboard the frame, mark the back side of the axle tube using a plumb bob. But before you tack weld it on, make sure the link and coilover mount is perpendicular to the ground. With the lower link bar right where it belongs, you can see that the front link is almost exactly where the original leaf spring mount was. And we're going to box this, so there's some trimming that has to be done. About here, and about there. Now this work would be possible with the bed still on the frame. However, the labor involved in pulling the bed off pays dividends big time when it comes to the convenience of working on both sides of the rail and being able to stand flat-footed while you can see everything that you do. Now, plasma cutter is a great tool, but if you're going to weld in the areas that you're cutting with the torch, make sure that you grind the slag off for better weld integrity. Now, just like on the front of the truck, we're using cardboard to make a template and transfer it onto 8-inch steel to make our boxing plates. Then, staggering our welds, burning it in. It's up to you whether or not you grind down the weld completely for a nice finished show quality look, but you at least need some flat real estate to weld the frame bracket in. And the front link mount pivot point needs to be about 5 inches below the axle center line. Alright, now you may have noticed we haven't discussed the need for a rear track bar. That's because the 4-link system we're using utilizes triangulated upper links. With both upper links mounted at opposing angles, that's going to eliminate any side-to-side or lateral movement of the rear axle, letting us run without a rear track bar. Now the axle end of the upper link just gets installed over the axle tube. The only other measurement we've got to pay attention to is the frame end. We've got to mount it 2 1/8 inches above the rear axle center line. That'll maintain all the correct geometry that the Welder Series suspension has designed into it. Now, before we send this antique suspension system off to its final resting place, we wanted to show you guys some.
Someone who matches the description of a criminal suspect. A suspect who drops a
You treat them as active. You don't just say, oh, the soul is safe, and then they throw the body out. No. The body is also safe, but it's seen as a container for the soul.
Are you wanting to stay more productive at work? Well, cut your workload by 80%. Focusing in on 20% of your daily tasks and activities, it doesn't necessarily have to yield 20% of what you want to get done for that day. Use the 80-20 Pareto principle to make smarter decisions about your tasks for the day, and you might be surprised at the outcomes. So, what is the 80-20 Pareto principle? The 80-20 principle is actually quite simple. It suggests that 20% of your actions or the activities influence 80% of the outcomes. This rule comes from economics. In the late 1800s, Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto observed that 80% of Italy's wealth came from 20% of the population. Allegedly, Vilfredo was inspired by his key plants in his garden. As he was walking through his garden, he noticed that 20% of the plants in the garden